To have a 9-foot healthy female shark eaten alive straight up set this scene of, it's a murder mystery.
A 9-foot great white shark doesn't just vanish, not quietly, not instantly, and definitely not without leaving a trail. This wasn't a sick animal. It wasn't injured. It wasn't young or weak. It was a healthy, powerful predator cruising near the surface like it had done countless times before. Then, in a matter of seconds, it was gone. The data tells a story no one was prepared for. One moment, the shark was swimming in cold, open water. The next, the temperature around it spiked violently. At the exact same time, it was dragged downward, fast, into crushing darkness nearly 2,000 feet below the surface. No struggle, no warning, just erased. At first, scientists thought the tag must have malfunctioned. Sensors glitch, electronics fail. But this wasn't noise in the data. It was clean, precise, and terrifyingly consistent. The numbers didn't suggest an accident. They described an attack. What made this case truly disturbing wasn't just that a great white died. Great whites die all the time. It was how it died and what had to exist for it to happen. Something had ambushed an apex predator and consumed it so efficiently that the only evidence left behind was a small piece of plastic and a digital timeline of its final moments. The ocean is full of legends. Killer whales, giant squid, ancient monsters people swear never went extinct. But this story isn't about myths. It's about what the data proves. And once scientists pieced it together, they realized the truth was far worse than anything people were imagining. Because the thing that killed this shark wasn't a ghost from prehistory. It was something real, something alive, and something that may still be swimming out there, right now. The shark at the center of this mystery wasn't small, weak, or inexperienced. She was a fully capable great white, already large enough to dominate most of the ocean around her. Scientists measured her at just over 9 feet from nose to tail. In human terms, that's like a teenage athlete already stronger than most adults, still growing, still improving, and just entering her prime. They named her Shark Alpha, and the name fit. Her body was pristine. No scars, no damaged fins, no signs she had recently fought or lost a confrontation. That alone mattered. Great whites carry their history on their skin. Bite marks, torn edges, missing chunks. Those are signs of past battles. Alpha had none of them. She was clean, healthy, and operating exactly where she should have been in the food chain. At this size, Shark Alpha wasn't prey. She was a hunter. She fed on large fish and seals and had the speed, power, and awareness to avoid danger. Very few animals in the ocean would even consider attacking her. Fewer still could succeed. That's what made her such a valuable subject for scientists. She represented the textbook example of a thriving apex predator. When the research team encountered her, everything went smoothly. There was no chase, no panic, no sign that she sensed a threat. She moved with calm confidence, allowing the team just enough time to work. That behavior alone told them she wasn't stressed or vulnerable. She was in control. Nothing about Shark Alpha suggested she was in danger. Nothing about her size or condition hinted at what was coming. And that's what makes the next part so unsettling. Because if a shark like this could disappear without a trace, it meant something else in those waters was operating on an entirely different level. To understand how scientists knew something was wrong, you have to understand the technology they attached to Shark Alpha. This wasn't a simple tracking tag that just pings a location and calls it a day. It was closer to a flight recorder, a black box built for the ocean. The tag was designed to record depth, light levels, and water temperature every single minute, day or night, calm water or chaos. It didn't guess, it didn't average, it logged everything. And it was built to survive conditions that would crush most machines, from freezing surface waters to the brutal pressure of the deep. Once attached to a shark's fin, the device quietly does its job. It follows along as the animal hunts, dives, rests, and migrates. After a set period of time, the tag is programmed to detach, float to the surface, and transmit its stored data to satellites overhead. Scientists can then replay the shark's movements like a timeline, seeing exactly where it went and how it behaved. For shark alpha, those first months were almost boring. The tag sent back regular pings, the depth changes were normal, the temperatures matched expectations. She cruised along the coast, dipped down to hunt, rose back toward the surface, and repeated the pattern again and again. Nothing strange, nothing dramatic. And that was a good thing. In research, boring data means the system is working and the animal is behaving naturally. Shark alpha was doing exactly what a healthy great white should do. No sudden drops, no extreme dives, no unexplained heat spikes. Then, without warning, the pattern broke. The clean, predictable data stream suddenly went silent. And when the signal finally reappeared, it wasn't floating out at sea where it should have been. It was lying on a beach, only a couple miles from where Shark Alpha had first been tagged. Whatever happened out there didn't just end a tracking mission, it left behind evidence. When the researchers finally recovered the tag, something felt wrong immediately. It hadn't drifted for weeks across open water like most detached tags do. It hadn't been carried by currents into deep ocean or washed up hundreds of miles away. It had returned almost to the exact place where Shark Alpha was first tagged. That alone was unsettling. Up close, the device looked damaged. The casing was worn and discolored, like it had been exposed to something harsh. It wasn't cracked or crushed, but it didn't look like a piece of equipment that had simply floated in seawater. It looked like it had been through something. The real shock came when the team downloaded the data. At first, everything looked normal. Shark Alpha was swimming at a steady depth in cold water around 46 degrees Fahrenheit. Light levels matched daytime conditions. The movement was smooth and controlled. Then, in a single moment, the graph went insane. The temperature didn't climb, it exploded. Within seconds, the reading jumped from 46 degrees to 78. That kind of spike doesn't happen in the open ocean. Water doesn't heat up that fast unless something is very wrong. There were no thermal vents in the area, no volcanic activity, no environmental explanation. At the exact same instant, the depth data collapsed. The tag didn't slowly sink, it was yanked downward, nearly 2,000 feet into the darkness. Fast, violent, deliberate. This wasn't gravity, it was force. And then, it stayed there. For 8 straight days, the tag remained in total darkness. The depth changed slightly, as if whatever carried it was moving around, and the temperature stayed locked at that same hot 78 degrees the entire time. No cooling, no fluctuations, just constant internal heat. That was the moment the team stopped thinking about malfunctions. The tag wasn't in the water anymore. It was inside something, a living body, digesting. A healthy 9-foot great white had been attacked, overpowered, and eaten. Not injured, not chased away, gone. And now the only question left was one that chilled everyone involved. What kind of animal can swallow a shark like that? Once the reality of a predation event set in, the list of suspects became very short. In the modern ocean, only a handful of animals are known to challenge great white sharks, and one name immediately rose to the top: orcas. Also known as killer whales, orcas have a terrifying reputation for a reason. They are intelligent, social, and brutally efficient hunters. More importantly, they are one of the only predators on Earth that have been repeatedly documented killing great whites. If something took down Shark Alpha, this seemed like the obvious answer. There was already a precedent. In South Africa, 2 male orcas had become infamous for wiping out local shark populations. Researchers watched entire regions turn into ghost zones after their arrival. The sharks didn't just die, they fled, fast. Some disappeared for months, abandoning hunting grounds they had used for years. The method was especially disturbing. The orcas worked together, herding a shark until it was disoriented. Then they flipped it upside down. When a shark is inverted like that, its nervous system shuts down. It enters a trance, completely helpless. Once immobilized, the orcas bit near the fins and extracted the liver. That organ is packed with fat and energy. The rest of the body was left behind. On paper, this made perfect sense. Orcas were big enough, smart enough, strong enough. Swallowing a tracking tag would be nothing for an animal that can weigh 10 tons. And if orcas were present, it would explain why an apex predator suddenly became prey. But when the researchers compared this theory to the actual data from Shark Alpha, the story started to fall apart. The first problem was the temperature. The tag recorded 78 degrees Fahrenheit. Orcas are mammals, warm-blooded. Their internal body temperature is closer to 98 degrees. If an orca had swallowed the tag, the reading would have been much higher, 20 degrees higher at least. The numbers didn't match. Then there was the feeding behavior. Orcas don't swallow great whites whole. They are precise, surgical. They take the liver and leave the rest. Shark Alpha's tag stayed inside a digestive system for 8 days. That suggests full consumption, not selective feeding. The dive was another red flag. After the attack, the tag was dragged nearly 2,000 feet down and stayed deep. Orcas are air breathers. They need to surface regularly. A sustained deep dive like that, especially after a high-energy hunt, just doesn't fit their physiology. And finally, there was the aftermath. When orcas move into an area, sharks panic. Chemical signals spread. Entire populations flee. But after Shark Alpha vanished, nothing changed. Other sharks kept hunting. The region stayed active. There was no sign of fear. Piece by piece, the orca theory collapsed. The most famous shark killer in the ocean had an alibi, which meant the real predator wasn't an outsider. It was something already there, hiding in plain sight. With orcas ruled out, the investigation shifted to where the attack happened. Shark Alpha disappeared near the edge of the continental shelf, close to a place known as the Bremer Canyon. This isn't shallow coastal water. It's a massive underwater gorge where the seafloor drops away into darkness, thousands of feet deep, a place rarely explored and barely understood. Canyons like this are hunting grounds for the ocean's strangest residents. Giant squid, colossal squid, creatures that live far below the reach of sunlight and human observation. So naturally, attention turned to them. The theory was seductive. A colossal squid can reach terrifying sizes. Some estimates push them beyond 40 feet in length. They have eyes the size of basketballs and a beak powerful enough to tear through steel cables. Their tentacles are lined with rotating hooks designed to grab and hold struggling prey. If anything could rise from the deep and drag a shark down into the abyss, a squid fit the nightmare perfectly. The depth data supported it. A plunge to nearly 2,000 feet is exactly where these animals live. The sudden disappearance made sense. A shark wouldn't see it coming. A single ambush from below, tentacles locking on, and the fight would be over fast. For a moment, it seemed like the answer. Then the temperature data ruined everything. Squid are invertebrates, cold-blooded. Their internal temperature is the same as the water around them. If a squid had eaten the tag, the reading would have stayed at 46 degrees. It wouldn't spike. It couldn't spike. There is no biological mechanism for a squid to generate that kind of heat. The data was unforgiving. No matter how dramatic the idea was, it didn't fit the facts. The monster from the deep was innocent. That only left one possibility the internet loves even more. A creature people desperately want to believe is still out there, waiting in the darkness. Once the squid theory collapsed, the conversation online went exactly where you'd expect. If no modern predator could explain it, then maybe the answer wasn't modern at all. Maybe this was proof that something ancient was still alive. Megalodon. The name alone sends chills. A prehistoric shark said to reach lengths of 60 feet, with jaws wide enough to swallow a small car. If any creature could make a 9-foot great white disappear in seconds, this was it. To many people, the case seemed solved the moment the name was mentioned. The logic was simple. A megalodon wouldn't struggle with a shark that size. The violent depth change made sense. The sudden attack made sense. Even the location fit the fantasy. Deep, unexplored canyons where sunlight never reaches feel like perfect hiding places for a surviving relic of prehistory. Some even tried to explain away the temperature. Since Megalodon is believed to be closely related to modern great whites, they argued it might have shared a similar warm-bodied system. A warm stomach could explain the 78-degree reading. On the surface, it all sounded convincing. But science doesn't care how exciting an idea is. There is zero physical evidence that megalodons still exist. None. A predator that massive would leave signs everywhere: bite marks on whales, fresh teeth embedded in prey, massive disturbances in marine ecosystems, sonar detections, something. Instead, there is nothing but speculation and internet forums. A shark that size couldn't hide indefinitely. The ocean is vast, but it's not empty. A living megalodon would reshape the food chain around it, and that simply isn't happening. For the researchers, relying on a prehistoric ghost to explain real modern data wasn't just unlikely, it was lazy. The answer had to be biological, documented, measurable, something that actually lives in today's oceans. And once they went back to the data with that mindset, the solution stopped looking mythical and started looking disturbingly familiar. The breakthrough came when the scientists stopped asking what they wanted the predator to be and instead asked a simpler question. What kind of mammal could produce a stomach temperature of exactly 78 degrees while swimming in 46-degree water? That number wasn't random. It wasn't an average. It was a signature. The answer turned out to be hiding in plain sight: a great white shark. Most people think of sharks as cold-blooded animals, and for most species that's true. Their body temperature matches the ocean around them. Cold water means slow muscles and sluggish movement, but great whites are different. They belong to a small, elite group of fish that have evolved a biological advantage. They are regionally endothermic. This means they can generate and retain heat in specific parts of their bodies. They don't warm everything, just the parts that matter most: their muscles, their eyes, their brain, and their stomach. This is made possible by a complex system of blood vessels called the rete mirabile, which translates to the wonderful net. It works like a heat recycler. As warm blood leaves the muscles, it passes next to cold blood returning from the gills. The heat is transferred back into the body instead of being lost to the surrounding water. The result is a predator that can move fast, see clearly, and think sharply in freezing depths. And crucially, it allows great whites to digest large meals efficiently. Scientists already knew this. When a great white is actively digesting, its stomach temperature stabilizes at almost exactly 78 degrees, the same number recorded by Shark Alpha's tag. The match wasn't close. It was perfect. Suddenly, the dive made sense too. After consuming a massive meal, great whites often descend into deep, cold water. It helps regulate their internal temperature while their stomach works overtime. The plunge to nearly 2,000 feet wasn't evidence of something unnatural. It was textbook behavior. The lack of panic among other sharks also fit. This wasn't a new predator invading the area. It wasn't a takeover. It was an internal event. One shark killing another. The super predator wasn't a myth. It wasn't ancient. It wasn't alien. It was a great white shark. But that answer raised a far more terrifying question. If a great white did this, just how big did it have to be? Understanding that Shark Alpha's killer was another great white only deepened the mystery and the horror. Cannibalism in sharks isn't unheard of. It starts early, even before birth in some species. Sand tiger shark embryos, for instance, develop teeth in the womb and literally hunt their siblings before they're born. Nature's most brutal survival of the fittest lesson begins before life even starts. In the wild, larger sharks routinely prey on smaller ones. Bull sharks, tiger sharks, and great whites all follow the same rules. But seeing it on this scale, in the data from Shark Alpha, was staggering. A fully grown 9-foot predator taken down by one of its own kind? That wasn't just survival, it was dominance. The tag told the story with chilling precision. The temperature spiked instantly, the depth plunged violently. There was no prolonged struggle recorded, no back-and-forth chase. This wasn't a fight. Shark Alpha was ambushed, swallowed whole or in massive chunks. Seconds, that's all it took. From the metabolic heat required to maintain that 78-degree stomach and the sheer physics of the attack, researchers estimated the size of the killer. Conservative numbers suggested at least 16 feet long, over 4,000 pounds, a station wagon with teeth. Some experts argue it was likely closer to 20 feet, pushing 6,000 pounds, with a girth of more than 8 feet. This was a true deep-water giant, rivaling the legendary deep blue. These aren't the surface-hunting, seal-chasing sharks people usually imagine. These are cautious, intelligent, deep-water specialists. They have survived for decades, feeding on squid, fish, and other sharks, growing massive without ever needing to approach humans or cameras. They are apex predators within apex predators, masters of the dark. Shark Alpha, for all her size and strength, was a teenager swimming into the territory of a queen. She had hunted fish, unaware that the real hunters in these waters didn't chase seals, they hunted other sharks. The ocean hierarchy had a rule, and the rule was simple: the biggest shark eats first. For the scientists, the most terrifying realization was that this predator could still be out there, a creature with no natural enemies, no oversight, patrolling the depths at will. Every dive, every ambush, every hunt leaves no witnesses. It's a world we barely glimpse, yet one governed by a code of violence far older than humanity. Shark Alpha's disappearance wasn't just a story of death. It was proof that in the deep, the unseen monsters aren't myths. They are alive, thriving, and enforcing the law of the ocean. Only the largest survive. Shark Alpha's fate rewrites everything we think we know about the ocean. The real apex predator isn't a legendary megalodon or a mythical sea monster. It's not even a killer whale striking fear into the hearts of smaller sharks. The predator that rules these dark waters is a shark, larger, smarter, and more ruthless than the ones we can see. What makes it terrifying isn't just its size, it's the way it moves unseen, ambushing other sharks with precision and force. It's patient, calculating, and perfectly adapted to a world humans barely explore. In the ocean's depths, where light vanishes and pressure crushes, the biggest shark writes the rules, and no one challenges it. Shark Alpha's disappearance was a lesson in the hierarchy of the deep. Size matters. Strategy matters. The unseen predator always wins. And for every shark we track, for every tag we recover, there may be a larger shadow lurking below, watching, waiting, and enforcing its dominance. So the next time you think you understand the ocean, remember, what you see is only a fraction of what exists. In the deep, there are monsters that don't need myth to terrify. They're real, they're living, and they're still out there. Do you think there could be sharks even bigger than what we've discovered, patrolling the abyss undisturbed? Or is Shark Alpha's story proof that nature's hierarchy is absolute, with the largest and fiercest always on top? The ocean may be vast, but it's far from safe. And the deeper we look, the more we realize that the real monsters aren't hiding in stories, they're hiding beneath the waves.